Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. My name is Ann Ziola, and I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Engagement at Doane University. And our goals in the Doane Alumni Office are always to educate, engage, and empower our alumni and friends. And so we are excited to have you join us for the webinar today in our brand new professional and personal development program called Lifelong Tigers. This webinar will be recorded and shared on our webpage, and we are also live today on Facebook. So hello to everybody that's joining us via social media. Today, the Doane Alumni Association is hosting a program called Employee Benefits. It's more than just a paycheck, presented by Doane alum Shannon Patrick. Hello, Shannon. Just a little
Hello,
bit of
Ann.
housekeeping before we get started today. If you are joining us through Zoom and you have any issues with connectivity, problems hearing, be sure and leave us a message in our chat box, and that's located at the very bottom of your screen on the Zoom toolbar. And our Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement, Mike Stellick, will be there to help you with those items. And you can also chat with each other in the chat box about your own experiences on today's topic. And I'm sure Mike and I will throw out some questions there to get you engaged as well. But if you have any questions for Shannon, please be sure and type those into the question and answer box located in the Zoom toolbar. And we'll have time throughout the presentation and at the end to answer those questions. And we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Shannon Patrick. Shannon graduated with his bachelor's degree from Doane in 1986 with a double major in math and business administration, and he returned to Doane for his master's of arts in management in 2009. Shannon is a senior field representative with the Insurance and Financial Services Department of the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, and he presents the group insurance and pension plans to association members and assists them with their employee benefits programs. Before joining the field staff, Shannon worked for 24 years with Cooperative Benefit Administrators, Inc., and also managed the member contact center at his current organization. So Shannon, we are glad to have you today, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ann, for inviting me to come participate today. Hopefully my time will be worthwhile. And like you mentioned, I did graduate in 1986, and at that time I certainly was done with school, so to speak. Going to study again after my undergraduate experience, which wasn't bad. It was just rather rigorous, and so I was ready to take a break. So I went out and picked up 20 years of real life work experience before I felt the pull of academia draw me back in. And so I started working on a master's degree then in 2006. And the main difference between my undergrad and my graduate experience was for my graduate experience, my employer was willing to pay all of my costs for my education, including 100% tuition, 100% books. All I had to do was put in the time, put in the effort. And so that's kind of a nice segue into the topic of employee benefits, because educational assistance is a nice employee benefit to have, and it was one that I was able to take advantage of and help me get my master's degree. So without further ado, and of course, you know, when I did own in those early 80s, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I didn't go there thinking I'm going to be a doctor, going to be a lawyer, you know, going to be an engineer. I didn't have any idea other than that I wanted to be Marty Fye. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't we
most
all want
folks
to
in
be
those early
Marty
80s,
Fye at some
we
point in our
all want to
lives?
be Marty Fye. So
He'll be glad to hear that.
yeah, he'll be glad to hear that. I'm sure he's tuned in right now. So I will go ahead and I will share my screen. Is that all right then, Ann?
You go right ahead.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Okay. Everybody see that now? Employee benefits. It's more than just a paycheck.
You got it.
And there's just some of the things we'll be talking about today. And I've got to admit, I'm probably going to run out of time before I run out of material. So just putting that out there at first, but we'll try and touch on as many of these as possible. But first, I'm going to ask the group a question. You know, why do employers even offer an employee benefit package? in addition to a paycheck. We all like the paycheck, pays our bills, but why do they do that? So if you could go ahead and take a look at, we'll have three answers here, because they want us to like them, or they want to be nice to us, right? So those are two. Or what's the third one? They want to attract and retain the best employees for a high performing workforce, right? And that's really what it boils down to, is they're in the market for a finite number of good employees. And so in order to compete for them, they have to also offer employee benefit packages to attract and retain those employees for a high performing workforce. So we'll first talk about employee benefits for retirement, because that's one of the most important things, is retirement. I'm going to have Katz kind of occasionally helping me out with my presentation today. Don't be concerned about that. But one of the most common forms of retirement benefits are things like 401ks or 403bs. Okay, we always get in the alphabet soup and talking employee benefits, and these are defined contribution types of retirement plans. So there isn't any entity or organization that's guaranteeing the benefit in your 401k. The value of that is going to be determined by, one, the amount of contributions that you actually put into the plan, and what those investment earnings are also going to be. So when we think of these types of plans, and then we're going to have the option to invest in these financial asset categories. And when we simplify it, you could break them down into three: cash, bonds, and stocks, right? We'll talk a little bit about each one of the three here. Cash, of course, gives you stability. It's there to preserve current capital that you have. It's not really meant to go up or go down. It's basically meant to stay the same. And examples of cash, other than cash, are savings accounts, CDs, money markets, and T-bills. The second one is going to be bonds. The objective of bonds is to generate income. These are interest-bearing debt securities that governments and corporations put out. It's like a loan that they put out, and then investors buy those bonds, and then the bond issuer is going to pay those loans back at a specific date, and then interest on those. So bonds give you current income. And then stocks, the objective of stocks is, of course, for growth. And stocks, of course, are units. You own units of ownership in a company, and then you make money when either the stock increases in value, or if the company pays part of their earnings to shareholders in the form of dividends. So you take those three asset classes, and then that's how you can cobble together your 401k. So basically, here's kind of what it looks like, right? You're going to take advantage of all the benefits of broad diversification, where you own just little slices of big companies like Ford, Walmart, Apple, GE, Home Depot. And that's so that you don't have it overweighted with just one type of company or one type of sector. So if things go bad in one, it's not going to affect your portfolio so much. So you're doing it by diversifying your investments over a broad range of different companies and different types of entities like that. And then, of course, the basic fund objectives of those of growth is stocks. Stocks is for growth, income for bonds, and then, of course, money market is for that protection of the principal. And then here also is an example of how rates of return can affect your overall investment strategy. Now, remember, with risk comes return, right? So if you're risk averse, if you're not one that's willing to put up with swings in the stock markets, the highs and lows, and you're looking at like a 3% return, and we're looking at here at a $400 monthly investment over a 25-year time frame. You could see it after that 25 years at 3%, you're at $178,000 Whereas if you're less risk averse, you're willing to roll the dice, so to speak, so more, now you're looking at more than $380,000. So again, when you have to decide, what's your risk tolerance, what's your time horizon, is also going to affect what your total return on those investments are going to be. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit greater detail as well. And then also don't forget that fees are a part of any administration of any type of 401k, 403b. There's always going to be fees in the way of the administration of the plan, compliance, legal, administration, and all of that. And so if we have $100,000 investment over a 20-year time frame, with an 8% annual return, 0.5% in fees, you'll still have $424,000, whereas 3.75 in fees now has whittled that down to $229,891. So always keep in mind, what is it costing you to participate in these plans? So the higher the fees that you're paying, of course, the more return you're going to need in order to arrive at your retirement income goals at that point. Risks of investing, right? So again, with defined contribution plans, we as the participant are the ones that are on the hook for the risks of investing. And so here, this is just going to show you the delta in these different types of asset categories. Off to your left is your small stocks in the blue bar graph, which shows you can gain as much as 142.9% and lose as much as 58%. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I wanted to go back. Okay. Lose as much as 58% for an annual compound return of almost 12%. Large stocks, less delta, so you still get 54% on the plus side, negative 43% on the negative side for a 10.2%. Long-term government bonds, again, less risk than that, 40.4 on the positive, minus 15 on the negative for 5.5% compounded annually. And then government bonds, and then of course T-bills are going to be the most safer, lowest risk ones. So this is going to show you then you're going to be in small stocks and large stocks. You'll be ready for some ups and downs, some peaks and valleys in your career when you're investing over that. But just then keep in mind also, though, with those peaks and valleys comes usually a greater overall rate of return for that person. And here, this shows you stocks, bonds, bills, and inflation from 1926 to 2019. Hopefully, I don't think any of us were around in 1926, but had you invested $1 at that time, you could see that if you were invested in small stocks, that would now be worth almost $39,000. Large stocks, it would be worth almost $92.44. Government bonds, $159. The green bar there is your T-bills at 3.3%, and then the $14, that's your inflation. So of course, we always want to stay ahead of inflation. And so what this is telling us then is over the long haul, stocks are going to outperform bonds consistently over any 5-year, 10-year period. Even when you look back down here where the stock market crash and things like that, it did eventually rise out of that. So if you have a long time horizon, you're going to want to consider having more of exposure to stocks than bonds. And then as you get closer and closer to retirement, have less exposure to stocks and more exposure to bonds at that point. And this shows you just that change then, stocks, bonds, bills of inflation from 2000. So from Y2K to present. So almost a 20-year time frame here. And you can still say small stocks at 9.3%, still outperforming everybody else. But now government bonds have surpassed large stocks in just the last 20-year time frame. So don't underestimate the value of having a bond presence in any sort of portfolio that you're going to have. And then of course, here's the rate of inflation, and then our T-bills in the last 20 years aren't even keeping up with inflation. So that would mean negative earnings on T-bill types of things. And then, of course, here's just a simple risk and return graph, right? Low risk is cash, but of course, low return. You kind of think of it on this ascending scale. Bonds, a little bit more risky, a little bit more return than cash, but less than stocks. And then stocks, of course, are going to be out here a little higher, higher risk involved with stocks. But then, of course, with that higher risk comes higher return potential as well. And why is this important? You know, when I travel around and I counsel folks on benefits, and some will say, you know, well, geez, I have $100,000 in my 401k, and you know, like that's a whole lot of money. And then I remind them, well, that's really not a whole lot of money to base a retirement decision on. And that's because inflation. You know, don't underestimate the impact of inflation when we do get to retirement. This just goes to show, if you have a 3% inflation, and that's probably a little high for what it's been over the last 2 years, but if you have 3% inflation and you have a $50,000 income need your first year of retirement, so you're going to need $50,000 to cover all your bills in your first year of retirement. With 3% inflation, after 30 years, you're now going to need $121,000 to pay for those $50,000 you had in your first year of retirement. Okay, so don't underestimate that impact of inflation and how you really do have to plan and allow for additional money to come into your retirement accounts to allow for that inflation that's going to eat away at the purchasing power of those dollars that you have. And then also, when investing in the stock markets, you can expect volatility, right? I mean, it's never one of these things where it's always on an up and up graph. On average, over the past 70 years, between 1948 and 2017, stock market investors have experienced on average a 5% dip more than 3 times a year, 10% decline once a year, 15% dip every 3 years, and then a bear market, which is a decline of at least 20% every 6 years, right? So this is going to tell you, you know, you're going to be up and down if you're going to be in the stock market. So be ready for it, right? There's going to be some volatility involved with that. But we do have risk management tools at our disposal that we can use to help offset some of those effects, including asset allocation. Remember, how much are we going to have in stocks, bonds, in cash? Diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Dollar cost averaging. Buying stocks on a regular basis, regardless of what the share price is. Rebalancing. Over time, your portfolio is going to get out of whack with what your original allocations were going to be. You might want to consider rebalancing and put it back in line again. And then time in the market, not timing. Okay, there's the argument of am I going to get in the market, am I going to get out? There really isn't any advantage to that. It's actually time in the market that's going to benefit you rather than timing. So asset allocation, what is it? Well, it's an investment strategy, controls risk and return based on how much of a portfolio you invested in stocks, bonds, and cash. Of course, that's going to all be dependent then, of course, on what your risk tolerance is and what your time horizons are going to be. And I threw this in. I thought this was rather interesting because we always get hung up on, well, when am I going to buy this stock? I'm going to wait till it's down, or I'm going to wait till I time this. Nobody has this timing thing down, and you know, not even Kramer on TV or anything like that. And so this just goes to show the importance of asset allocation in your portfolio. Studies have shown that 90% of the variability of your performance is due to asset allocation, and only 4% is due to security selection, and only 2% to market timing. Okay, so that's even more important for why you would want to reallocate your balance every once in a while. And it took me a long time to realize why you'd want to do that, but you're selling off the stuff that's been going well, buying into stuff that hasn't so much and rebalancing your account. And you're doing exactly what they're telling you to do to be successful in the stock market. You're selling high and you're buying low, and you don't even know you're doing it. So that's the advantages of asset allocation. And then what factors are going to affect your decision on asset allocation? Of course, what kind of return are you going to need? You know, what type of lifestyle are you going to have to pay for in retirement? What's your risk tolerance? You know, are the stocks going up and down keeping you up at night? You know, is that something that's going to be a problem for you? So what's your risk tolerance? And then what's your time horizon? You know, somebody that's in their early 20s has a long time horizon until retirement. So they're going to want to consider having a good portion of their asset allocation in stocks to take advantage of that performance over time. Because we just saw earlier how stocks outperform bonds and cash over time. So that's going to be part of your decision. And then this is shows you how risk versus return between 1970 and 2019. And it shows off to the right here, the most risky portfolio is, of course, 100% stocks. And you would think that the least risky portfolio would be bonds, but it is not. You can see even bonds, 100% bonds, are still out here almost 12% on the risk scale, where a blend of 33% stocks and 67% bonds is actually even less risky than a 100% bond portfolio. So don't think just because you're 100% bonds, you're not involved in risk. You can still have risk. Always offset that with bonds and stocks. And of course, as you go out here, the higher the risk, the higher the potential for a return as well for those. And then, of course, changes in your circumstances are going to affect asset allocation. You know, changes in wealth, what's your time horizon? Did that change? Your liquidity requirements and your tax circumstances or family situations and unique needs and circumstances. So it's not something that's always going to be set in stone. It could be something that can change over time. And then diversification, of course, spreading your dollars among a variety of different investments within an asset class, so you don't always have all your eggs in one basket. And then dollar cost averaging. You just keep making periodic investments of the same securities regardless of the market price. So you're buying even when they're low, so that when they do appreciate, you get greater value out of that. And then here's why it's important to stay in the stock market. You know, all this market timing stuff, people getting out of the market and then waiting to get back in. Just know that investors in U.S. stocks that were out of the market for the best, I think that's supposed to be 100 trading days from 2000 to 2019, your compound rate of return was negative 5.5% versus 6.1% if you just stayed invested. So yeah, and that's whether you're just in the market or out of the market, always best to just stay in the market. Yeah, best 50 trading days from 2000 to 2019. So, and then if you get anything at all out of this presentation, it's these two things, and write these two things down, okay? Start as early as you can and save as much as you can. And here's why. Here's the price of procrastination. And I understand when you get out of college, you want to pay yourself back. You want to get that nice new vehicle. You want to live in the nice upscale apartments and all that kind of stuff because you deserve it, right? Well, think about paying yourself back first, right? Instead of having that high lifestyle, pay yourself back first. We have Bob, Sue, and Rick. Bob, Sue, and Rick were all hired at age 22, all making the same $30,000 a year salary, all getting 3% raises, and all of them are putting in 10% into their 401k. Now let's assume they get an 8% investment return, and all of them want to retire at age 62, right? Bob, he got going early. When he turns age 62, he's going to have over $1 million in his 401k to help fund his retirement. Sue She waited, and for, let's see, 5 years was it? And so she's going to have $868,000. Yep. So 5 years, she delayed contributions. Then Rick, he of course had that expensive lifestyle to pay for early on. He didn't get going for 10 years. And so now he's got 642,000, almost half of what Bob did. And all Bob did was he made 10 years more contributions than Rick did, right? So don't be Rick, and you know who you are out there, right? Okay. How do you invest in today's market climate, right? Up and down. You see the stock market, it's up one day, down. Well, implement an asset allocation that's appropriate for your time frame, your risk tolerance, and your return requirements. Diversify within those asset categories. Dollar cost average, make it consistent, pay yourself back first to reduce your average price per share, and monitor your portfolio drift and rebalance when appropriate, and then be patient, right? You're not in this for the short term or for the the quick reactions to what's happening in the stock market. You're in it for the long haul. Set a plan and go accordingly with that. And then of course you're going to ask, well, Shannon, how much can I actually put into my 401k? And that's a great question, because the IRS does limit the amount of money that you can put into a 401k. They aren't going to let you put all your wages in, because they're going to want to generate some revenue off taxes. Because when you're putting in money in a 401k, 403b, they're going in on a pre-tax basis. And so that also affects your current tax situation, could put you in a lower tax bracket. And then it grows tax-free, and then it's not actually taxed until it comes out. So in 2020, the most you can put into your 401k is $19,500. And then if you happen to turn age 50 or older anytime during the calendar year, you get to put in an additional $6,500 into your 401k, or $25,000 is the contribution limit for those age 50 and older. And then you may also have opportunities to put money in on an after-tax basis. Some 401ks offer a Roth, so you put money in on an after-tax basis, and then as long as it's qualified and you've held it for over 5 years, that money can come out tax-free. Okay, so we'll kind of switch benefits here to the retirement stuff. And the one benefit that almost all of us that are on this call are going to take advantage of and are paying into is Social Security, right? And I wanted to use this as kind of the segue into pensions, because it's something we all will participate in. We're all going to benefit from Social Security. And that's also a decision you got to make too, on when am I going to take Social Security benefits. How do you qualify? Well, you earn benefits during your working years. And generally, as long as you work 10 straight years or 40 credits, and then you get, for the qualifying for your Social Security benefits, you get up to 4 credits per year. So you get up to 40, and then you qualify for benefits. In 2019, 1 quarter equaled $1,360, or $54.44 for one entire year. So once you're eligible for that, then you become eligible for benefits, and the amount of your retirement benefits from Social Security are dependent on these things. One, your highest 35 years of wages. Okay, so they use the average of your 35 years of wages adjusted for inflation, and then it's also dependent on at what age you're going to file for benefits. You can file at your full retirement age, and we'll talk about that here too. The earliest you can file is age 62, and the latest you'll ever want to consider filing for Social Security benefits is age 70. Okay, so when we look at that, and everybody could be able to get an estimate of what your Social Security benefits are by simply establishing an account on ssa.gov. That's where you can create an account. They have a retirement calculator online, and you can even apply for benefits on ssa.gov. Lots of things you can do over the website there. In fact, they even have those calculators to determine if I started taking my Social Security at age 62, When would I cross over if I were to delay until age 66? So they got some nice tools there to help you as well. This should look familiar for a lot of folks. You'll get, as you get closer and closer to retirement age, they start mailing you these. They used to mail them to everybody, but then they quit for a while to save some money, and now they're starting to mail to some folks as you get closer to it. So it's going to show you what you're eligible for retirement, disability, and what your family survivors would be eligible for as well. And then remember, you can take your Social Security as early as age 62. Most of us on this presentation here who are born after 1960, our full retirement age for Social Security is going to be age 67. But in this example, we have somebody that's got a $1,000 full retirement benefit at age 66 and 6 months. So that's somebody who's born before 1960 is when their full retirement age is. And so $1,000 at 66 and 6 months is $725 at age 62. It grows by about 8% from between 67 and 70. So if you waited till age 70, that $1,000 is now, oops, I wanted to go previous there. Okay, is now $1,280. We as Americans leave trillions of dollars on the table because we take Social Security benefits too early. Okay, don't just go, I'm going to start collecting Social Security at age 62 just because I can. That could end up costing you in the long run. Okay, so if you can defer Social Security, consider that, because your benefit actually goes up. And I think it crosses over at like age 81 or 82 for most folks, that if you would wait till age 70, you'll actually be off better. So if you live to age 82, you get more out of it than if you started taking it at age 62. So just something to keep in mind for everybody. And then a defined benefit pension plan. This is the third leg of income retirement stool. And about 1 out of 5 employees in the private work sector currently has access to a defined benefit pension plan. Still very prevalent in teaching, police, fire, energy sector, those types of occupations. It's still important. It allows for a guaranteed lifetime benefit, pays you in retirement based on a predetermined formula and a salary index, usually less than the 35 years of Social Security. And then they may also provide benefits for surviving spouses and beneficiaries as well. So here's where my math come in handy again that I learned at Doane. We have a formula to determine the benefit, a benefit level times years of credited service times a high 5 salary. And these are just examples of some of the pensions we offer here at NRECA. Multiply that times 1.19 to convert it to a life-only annuity. And then that's the amount that that participant would be eligible to receive for their entire life until they actually die. So here's an example of how that's calculated. 1.8% represents income replacement factor for a year of service. So if after 30 years of service, I get 1.8% from my pension plan, 30 times 1.8 is 54%. So I'm getting a little over half of my pre-retirement income from my pension plan. And that's going to pay me about $28,673 annually. Now, of course, that doesn't give you full 100% income replacement. But when you think of your other sources, you've got Social Security, and then you also got the 401ks and things like that. Between the three, you should be able to cobble together retirement income that's going to be comparable to what you were getting when you were actively employed. And then we'll switch gears a little quick to some tax advantage side accounts, because I know I'm starting to run out of time here a little bit, but I also wanted to make sure we talked about these, because these are also important employee benefits. To one thing that they do is they help make your life easier, right? Tax advantage side accounts are that were set up to help supplement group insurance programs to help participants offset the costs of higher deductibles, higher premiums and things like that. It's because the cost of providing group coverage has grown exponentially higher than just general rates of inflation. And so employers have had to adopt higher deductible plans, and in doing so, are also adopting these tax advantage side accounts to help participants pay for those costs. So one of the most popular ones is healthcare flexible spending accounts, referred to as like Section 125. To help pay for medical, dental, and vision expenses. You can put in up to $2,700 into this account for 2020. $500 of that is eligible for a rollover annually, or you get a 2.5 month grace period. Thing about these accounts, though, they're kind of use or lose, right? You either use the money in them or you lose it, and you lose it and you forfeit it back to the employer. That's kind of the downside to FSAs. Limited use FSAs for dental and vision expenses, again, only for those types of ones. And then dependent care assistance, you can put up to $5,000 in a tax advantage side account to help pay for daycare expenses for your children. And they haven't moved that $5,000 for years. And I know some people are able to burn through that the first 2 months of a year, but you're able to put money on a pre-tax basis for dependent care. And then here's my fan favorite tax advantage side account is an HSA, a health savings account. These are nice in that you become the owner of an HSA. And so you can take the account with you if you change jobs, right? So, and once the money is in your account, it's yours to use. Triple tax savings of HSAs, money goes in tax-free, grows tax-free, and comes out tax-free as long as you use it for eligible expenses. You can pay for today's healthcare costs or save for tomorrow. And you could even use it as a retirement account, and some even offer some investments. So you can invest in a portion of your HSA into mutual funds. So it's designed to help you save and pay for your health care now and even into retirement. Public IRS publication 502 is going to give you the most information about HSAs. You have to be enrolled in a qualified high deductible health plan, which for 2020 is a $1,400 individual and $2,800 family deductible. And so you also have to be age 18 to have an HSA. And then you can use your HSA, even though you may not be covered by your spouse's plan, you can use your HSA to cover deductibles and copays for your spouse or dependents as well. The IRS does limit the amount that you can put into an HSA in 2020. That amount is $3,550 for individuals, and for families it's $7,100. And these are from all sources. So these could be sources from both the employer or the employee or the guy even from down the street. If you turn age 55 or older, remember that age was age 50 for 401k, it's age 55 for HSAs. You can put an additional $1,000 in as a catch-up contribution. And then you always want to make sure you watch those contributions, because if you go over that annual limit, you're going to be subject to income tax and a 6% excise tax on top of that. You can use an HSA to pay for health coverage while receiving unemployment benefits, because there's only limited use that you can use HSAs for premiums. And these are the 4 premium uses for HSAs. If you're on COBRA, so if you lose your job and you continue COBRA, you can use HSAs to pay for that. Certain eligible long-term care insurance premiums are eligible for HSAs, and then any Medicare premiums and out-of-pockets, except for Medicare supplement plans. So how an HSA works, it's super simple, because they usually give you a debit card that you use that you can use at point of sale. And so you're going to use that for mostly your drug expenses and things like that. And then for doctor's bills, you're going to go into the doctor. They're not going to bill you until the claim has been processed and adjudicated by the claim payer, applies the discounts and all that kind of stuff. And then what I usually do is just call them up and pay them over the phone, because I've got a debit card to pay it, and then you know what your out of pocket is going to be. And so the idea between high deductible health plan and HSAs is that the employee now has some skin in the game. They have to assume a greater portion of the front end of the risk of that medical plan. And so with that idea, then the idea is that they're going to make better decisions on how to spend those healthcare dollars. And then you can use the HSA, and you don't have to use the HSA, right? You're in control of when to tap that HSA. And you don't have to take the disbursement in the year at which it was incurred. Your account balance can roll over from one year to the next. And if you can, my wife and I, we keep a file of receipts together so that someday if we want to take a trip to the Bahamas, we'll be able to tap our HSA. And as long as I've got receipts to back up the withdrawal from that HSA, I've still use that money to go to the Bahamas. So you get, HSAs are very, very employee friendly compared to HRAs, which are employer friendly. But I'm a big fan of HSAs and how they can work, especially for retirement. So HSA eligibility, of course, you have to be enrolled in that qualified high deductible health plan, and you can't be covered by other insurance that also isn't a high deductible health plan, including Medicare A, B, or D. And then also, of course, there is an exception if your other insurance is also a qualified high deductible health plan. But remember, HSA eligibility goes on single, they're individual types of accounts. And then always the IRS publication 969 for all the information you need to do about HSAs, okay? And then again, only the account holder is prohibited from having other coverage. Dependent expenses can be covered by HSA funds, even if they do have other coverage. However, the same expense cannot be double covered. So again, you can only use one tax advantage side account and not two. Most HSA withdrawals are done by debit cards or checks provided by the administrators, and your account holder, of course, is going to determine when and how to withdraw those funds. Thing to remember about HSAs, remember with you can still cover your dependent children up to age 26 under your high deductible health plan, but the rules with HSAs are still the old dependent eligibility rules. They have to be under age 19. If 19 to 24, they have to be a full-time student. If over age 24, they got to be disabled. And they also have to be listed as a dependent on your tax return. So there's kind of a little glitch in there in that you can still have your children covered under your high deductible health plan, but you may not be able to use your HSA for their expenses unless they meet those one of those four criteria outlined there. Non-medical expenses withdrawals are permitted. However, the withdrawal is going to be taxed as ordinary income. So I always like to use, you can go out and buy a television with your HSA. If you could do that, it's going to be taxed as ordinary income. And then it's also going to be subject to a 20% penalty. But if you make it to Medicare and you go out and buy that TV, then that 20% penalty goes away. So now you only have to pay ordinary income on it. And then you can start using that HSA for non-qualified expenses. You'd still have to consider it as ordinary income, but that penalty goes away. And then if employee closes out an HSA, balances can be cashed out, but are also going to be subject to income and subject to a 20% penalty on that. Okay. Well, withdrawals in the IRS, of course, it's always the account holder's responsibility to track and report HSA activity. There isn't anybody looking over anybody's shoulders, and most HSA administrators are going to provide online tracking tools subject to guidelines defined in IRC code 213D, and then you use Form 8889 to report post-tax deductions. And then this isn't anything that you have to require when you're filing your federal taxes, but always keep receipts in case of an audit, because anytime the IRS comes knocking on your door, you want to make sure you got receipts to back up any sort of withdrawal from your HSA. Okay. How'd I do on time there, Ann? I
You
thought,
did great. You are
okay,
right on
right
time.
on time.
So you
Wow.
must have had some good intuition there.
Well, I don't know about that. I get a little long-winded once in a while, but
Well, I think you're doing just fine. So we will go ahead and take some time for questions now.
yeah.
So just a reminder, if you're joining us on Zoom, please be sure to type your question into the question and answer box at the very bottom of your Zoom toolbar. Or if you're joining us from Facebook, you can leave us a question or your thought in the comment section. And while our audience is writing questions, I just wanted to make sure and thank you, Shannon, for joining us today. It's great to hear that your son Jacob is going to school at Doane now, and I think he's joined us along with some of his friends today. So that was good to have them on. And you've always been a very big proponent of our Greek system, as well as other areas at Doane too. So in fact, Shannon serves as the AO, the Alpha Omega representative for the Inter-Greek Alumni Association, and we have a meeting next month. So we are just really thankful for your commitment to Doane, and thankful that you could join us virtually today and share from your own experiences. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Ann.
I
And
will
just
take
want
a,
to
go right ahead.
throw out my son, Jacob. I promised him I wouldn't embarrass him or anything like that, but he actually takes some of this information to heart too. And when he was detasseling as a young teenager at 14 years old, he actually started his own Roth IRA.
Nice.
So at
You taught him
14,
well.
taught him well. He's got a good start on him. So
He's going to be that millionaire out
yeah,
there that's ready to retire. And
at 45, so
and
if he
just so you
wants.
know, Rick Sparks was on here earlier, and he said, you want to be a Rick Sparks. Your other example had don't be
He
a
was
Rick. He took a little offense to
he
that,
took
but
offense to the Rick being the late one. Well, I knew that was going to be the good one for him. And
that's
I didn't
right.
change those names, by the way. Those were the given names. I did not change those.
That's right. And your son does say hi, so he
Yeah,
did join us today. We received one question so far.
yeah.
It's from Leslie, and she says, for a company of 80 plus employees, is it good to offer an HSA?
Well, it kind of depends on what you're trying to do, right? I would assume you're probably already offering a medical type of plan, right? And so if you're going to make the switch, make the jump to a high deductible health plan, you want to look at what kind of tax savings am I going to have from that, or premium savings from making that jump to the high deductible health plan. And then can I take a portion of that premium savings and can I use that then to fund my HSA? Does that make sense? So usually what you're going to want to do is what kind of premium savings am I going to get from going to a high deductible health plan? It's really not dependent on the number of employees you have. 80 is definitely a good number of employees if you're gonna do an HSA. But you're going to want to look at what kind of premium savings can I generate from going to a high deductible health plan, and then can I take a portion of that premium savings, use it to fund those tax advantage side accounts like an HSA, and then also keep part of that premium savings for yourself. So it's a win-win-win for everybody involved.
Great.
Does
And
that,
she
does that,
I think that does answer it. She
okay,
said that yes, they do have a medical program there or a medical insurance, and that she said thank you for answering. So I think
yeah,
that covered her question.
sure.
And anybody else that has questions, go ahead and put those into the Q&A or the chat right now. One of the things that you mentioned at the very beginning that was super beneficial for me, and I don't think people always know about, is the educational assistance that you can get from some of your employers. And similar to you, it's the only reason that I was able to go back and get my master's degree through Doane as well. And we both were a part of the Master's of Arts in Management degree at the Doane Lincoln campus, which did wonders for my career. But I was so thankful that Time Warner had offered that at the time. So what would you suggest for people to learn more about that, or to figure out if their company even has something like that?
Gosh, you're always going to want to at least check with HR, or if you have an employee handbook type thing, because a lot of times there may be some strings attached to it, where you may have to commit to a certain number of years to stay with the employer, or if you don't, you may have to pay a portion portion of that money back. So start with your HR folks first. See what kind of, some may not pay all of it, some may only pay tuition, some may pay. So educate yourself on what you're going to be looking at from outlay for all that kind of money too. So
right, and different ways to get it too. Like I had to be able to share how each one of my classes was related to my current position, and then stay for 6 months afterwards too. So lots of different things. We've had some comments coming in through Facebook too. Really, just lots of emojis. So
I suppose.
so from Russ Swoboda to Mike Chalkner, they're all saying you did a great job today. Tanya has also mentioned, and we love Tanya O'Neill too. She's on our alumni council, that really she's just trying to stay afloat. And
Right.
with all of the stuff that you talked about today, it just shows how important it is to be self-involved in your own
Right.
benefits.
Truly, truly. And a lot of times, you're left with just whoever you run into at the water cooler, to
Right.
find out, how does this thing work? And in full disclosure, I worked at NRECA for 7 years before I knew I had a pension, because
Right.
nobody explained it to me. I didn't know how it worked. And then once somebody explained it, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's a pretty good benefit.
Right.
So just educate yourself from the get-go. Start out early. And again, I've never been anywhere where they said, Shannon, that's the worst advice you ever gave me, was to start early and save as much as I can.
Right. Right.
Those
Or
aren't the, those are the ones that are going to be able to make the decision on, am I able to retire? The folks
right.
that want to stick your head in the sand and I'll deal with when I get there, well, the decision could be made for you already. You won't be able to retire.
Right.
So,
Or I'm too poor to start, when
right, right.
really you just need to budget it in with some of your other expenses to make sure that you're looking out for your future.
Pay
And
yourself first.
Nancy Murphy is also joining us today. She's one of the advisors for the Alpha
Yeah.
Omegas, and so she wanted to make sure and tell you that the current AOs are there supporting you as well. And we received another question on Facebook from Mike Chalkner, and he wants to know, what's the best way to save for your future if you work primarily in freelance jobs?
Freelance jobs. You can do, there's things available like simple IRAs and things like that you can do for self-employed people. Roth IRAs, any of the individual accounts, or something you're going to want to look into. Of course, for children's education, 529 types of plans, but always make sure you take care of your retirement first before you worry about juniors' college fund, right? Make sure that you should be ahead of in the pecking order of what to do. But simple IRAs are something that's available to people that do gig work, so to speak, or even establishing just individual Roth IRAs or IRAs in and of themselves.
Sure. And where would be good resources for them to look into for some of that? Are there certain professionals that they should be speaking with, or places online that you can find
Well,
that out?
a lot of financial advisors will be, the thing to be careful about them is they're usually going to have a product that they're going to try and steer you
Sure.
to. So some financial advisors will be able to help get you in that door, but also just know that they may have ulterior motive in getting you into a product or service
Right.
that may not always be best for you.
Right. Right. Well, that's great. I think this is good. It looks like we've wrapped up with some of our questions. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we share, Shannon?
Well, let's see here. I guess maybe in honor of an old time football coach that we had there at Doane. He was my coach my junior and senior year, and he kind of if you go no French wank, you're going to know that like, oh, this stuff, cheese and crackers, guys, this stuff's important. Make sure you get it. Come on. In
That
honor
is
of Fran, go Doane.
that's a dead-on impersonation of Fran Schwenk if I've ever seen one. That's pretty good. Well,
That's
thank you.
the tip of the hat to him, by the way.
He's a good one. Well, thank you
He is a
everybody
good
for
one.
for joining us today. We sure appreciate you being here. And this webinar has been recorded and it'll be shared online soon. So to see a lineup of new webinars, go to doane.edu/lifelongtigers. And our next webinar will take place on Thursday, September 24th at, I think we're doing that one at 12 or 12 Central as well. And it'll feature J. Victor McGuire from the class of 1978. And he'll be talking about strength through leadership and effective coaching, which is something we could all use in our professional and our personal lives. And so I know it's going to be a good one. I'd also be remiss if I didn't say that homecoming is starting very, very soon. So September 28th to October 4th, we'll have a lot of homecoming events, and most of them are all online this year. So whether you live in Mexico or you live in Crete, there's something that you can attend, and just go to doane.edu/homecoming for that. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks, Shannon.
Bye.